You ever been laughed at so hard that even your shadow feels ashamed? That was me, Emmanuel, the broke carpenter's son who thought love was enough. That evening still burns in my head like pepper in the eyes. The sunset was sweet, the kind that made you believe God was smiling at you. I had just finished carving a small wooden ring. Smooth, neat, simple. It took me 3 nights to get it right. Why, I walked to Clara's house with my heart thumping like generator noise. She was outside, sitting under the mango tree, scrolling her phone and humming Burna Boy's song. She looked beautiful. Too beautiful for a man with sawdust on his shirt, but I believed love didn't check price tags. I cleared my throat. Clara. She looked up, bored. Emmanuel, what again? You came to beg me to follow you to church? I smiled shyly. No, something better. She rolled her eyes but stood anyway. Okay, talk fast. My date is on. I went down on one knee. Her friends who were washing clothes nearby stopped and stared. My hand was shaking, but I brought out the ring. Clara, I know I don't have much now, but I love you, and one day. Before I could finish, she burst out laughing. Loud, like thunder. Oh my God, she screamed. Emmanuel, are you mad? This is a ring? Wood ring? You think I'm a carpenter's apprentice like you? Her friends joined in. Ah, love Don carry this one, go-o. One said, clutching her stomach. Another added, nah, poverty they push people to dream nonsense. Their laughter sliced through me like blade. Clara, I whispered, I mean it. I may be poor, but I'll make you proud. She snatched the ring from my hand, threw it on the ground, and said, if poverty was a man, it would wear your face. Please go and sand your wood somewhere else. Everybody laughed again. I stood there, numb. The air smelled of shame. I could hear my heart beating louder than their noise. I wanted the ground to open and swallow me. Finally, I bent down, picked up the ring, and walked away slowly. I didn't say another word, but inside me, something cracked, and something else began to grow. Hi, story lovers. Welcome to African Story and Soul, where every story touches your heart, stirs your soul, and reminds you that pain can still lead to purpose. Before we begin, please click the red subscribe button and join our Story and Soul family, where African stories come alive every day. That night, my mother saw me packing my bag. Emmanuel, where are you going? She asked, her wrapper loose around her tired body. I couldn't even look at her. I'm leaving, Mama. She stepped closer. To where? You don't even have transport money. I'll walk if I have to, I said, but I won't stay here and die in mockery. Her eyes softened. Is it because of that girl? I nodded once. She sighed and opened the small box under her bed. From it, she took a tiny cloth pouch and placed it in my hand. This was your father's charm. He wore it when he left the same village to find work. He never came back rich, but he came back respected. Wherever you go, don't forget where you started. Her voice trembled as she spoke. I hugged her tightly, smelling the soap and sweat on her neck, the scent of home. Then I stepped out into the night with nothing but my dreams, a small bag, and that pouch tied around my wrist. The moonlight followed me as I left the village behind. I didn't cry. I just whispered to myself, laugh now, Clara, but one day you'll remember this carpenter's son. You know those city stories you hear back in the village, where people say, once I reach Lagos, everything go change? Well, mine didn't, at least not immediately. The city greeted me like a hungry beast. Dust, noise, and heat everywhere. I arrived with only $2,500, a small bag, and my mother's charm around my wrist. By nightfall, I was sitting under a bridge at Ojota, holding my bag tight like it contained gold. That first week, I slept on carton. The sound of passing trailers was my lullaby. Sometimes I watched couples walking hand in hand under the streetlights and wondered what Clara was doing at that moment. Was she laughing again? Probably. Maybe at someone else. Maybe still at me. I spent my days walking from site to site asking for carpenter work. Most times, the foreman would look at me like I was a beggar. No vacancy, they'd bark. Sometimes I got lucky. Small jobs fixing stools, carrying wood, sanding planks, just enough to buy bread and pure water. But even in that struggle, I carried one stubborn fire in my chest. I refused to go back home. One night, it rained heavily. The kind of rain that didn't care if you had shelter or not. I was under the bridge again, my clothes soaked, shivering. A group of boys nearby were smoking and laughing. One of them offered me a stick. Guy, puff small, go make you forget your hunger. I shook my head. I need my hunger. It keeps me alive. They laughed, thinking I was crazy. Maybe I was, but pain was my only teacher then. Later, when the rain stopped, I found an old billboard lying by the road. For sale, building materials. I dragged it and laid it beside the bridge. That became my first workshop. Every morning, I carved little things from leftover wood. Key holders, name boards, small chairs. I'd polish them, take them to roadside traders, and beg them to buy. Some mocked me. Some gave me $200 just to make me go away. But a few saw something in my work and placed small orders. That was how I survived my first 6 months. Half hunger, half hope. One evening, I was carrying a small stool I had just finished making when a black car splashed muddy water all over me. The driver stopped, reversed, and rolled down the tinted window. Guess who was inside? Clara. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. She looked richer, heavier, brighter, like someone who now lived inside perfume bottles. A gold chain hung on her neck. Beside her sat a man in a suit, probably her new boyfriend. She stared at me through her tinted glasses and said, "Emmanuel, Jesus, is this really you?" I forced a smile. "Good evening, Clara." She sniffed, looked me up and down, then laughed, soft but cruel. "So Legos hasn't changed you, I see." Her boyfriend chuckled. "You know him?" "Oh, yes," she said. "He once tried to marry me with a wooden ring." They both laughed. I wanted to disappear. Then she said, "Next time, try cement. It lasts longer." And with that, the car drove off, leaving me wet, muddy, and humiliated again. That night, I didn't eat. I sat on my billboard bench and stared into the darkness. My hands were trembling, not from cold, but from pain. I whispered, "God, this is the second time she laughed. Please let there never be a third." That night changed everything. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I carried my tools and went to a big construction site at Ikeja. I begged the foreman again, and this time something shifted. He said, "You sabi cut straight edge?" "Yes, sir." "Show me." He pointed to a stack of wood. I measured, marked, and cut with precision. He nodded slowly. You get skill. Start tomorrow." That one job changed my life in ways I didn't see coming. I started earning small, $3,000 per day. I saved $500 daily in a nylon bag under the sand behind the site. People laughed at me for saving, but I didn't care. I knew what I was building. After a month, I met a man named Mr. Hassan, a contractor who noticed my dedication. "You work like someone who has fire chasing him," he said one day. "I do, sir," I replied quietly. He smiled. "Good. Keep the fire burning. One day it'll become light." Months turned into years. The Emmanuel that once slept under bridges became a skilled site supervisor. I learned fast. I started managing small teams, drawing plans, and helping to measure interiors. At night, I joined a free adult class in Yaba to learn design and basic computer skills. I'd sit beside young boys who called me uncle, even though I was barely 27. I didn't mind. I was building myself, brick by brick, line by line. I still lived simple. My shoes had holes, but my dreams didn't. Once Mr. Hassan saw me sketching a house design on paper during lunch. He leaned over. "Who drew this?" "I did," I said shyly. He studied it. "This is good, Emmanuel. Very good. You ever thought of becoming an architect?" I laughed. "Architect? That's for rich people." He smiled. "No, that's for determined people." The next week, he gave me a scholarship form for a training program sponsored by his company. I filled it, wrote the exam, and by some miracle, I got in. 3 years passed. I became one of the best site designers at Hassan & Co. I earned enough to rent a small room, send money to Mama, and even buy a decent phone. But that wasn't the real miracle. One morning, while waiting for Mr. Hassan at the office, a young woman ran across the road, straight into the path of a speeding truck. Without thinking, I dropped my bag and rushed forward. I pushed her out of the way, and the truck brushed my arm instead. Pain shot through me, but she was safe. The woman was crying and shaking. "Oh my God, you saved me! You saved my life!" At the hospital, she refused to leave my side. Her name was Amara, and she was Mr. Hassan's daughter. When her father found out, he came to my ward with tears in his eyes. "Emmanuel, my daughter said you risked your life for her." I smiled weakly. Anyone would have done the same. He shook his head. "No, not everyone has that heart." He offered to pay all my bills, and from that day, something shifted in our relationship. He started trusting me more, sending me to big projects, and introducing me to powerful clients. Within a year, I became project manager for Hassan & Co.'s biggest site in Lekki. I managed over 40 men. My salary tripled. I bought my first car, a small Toyota that felt like a private jet to me. Mama cried the first time she saw it when I visited home. "My son, you're truly your father's child," she said, smiling proudly. I didn't tell her about Clara that day. I didn't tell her about the laughter or the mud. I just said, "Mama, the city finally smiled at me." At work, things kept getting better. Mr. Hassan called me one afternoon. "Emmanuel, I want you to attend a board meeting next week. Investors from Dubai are coming. I want them to meet you." I froze. "Me, sir?" "Yes, you. You've earned it." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering where I started. The bridge, the hunger, the laughter. It was like God was saying, "Now you see why I let them laugh." At the meeting, I dressed neatly, crisp white shirt, black suit, clean shave. When I entered the conference hall, people turned to look. Not because I was famous, but because I carried something most of them had lost. Hunger for purpose. The investors arrived. Cameras flashed. Speeches began. Halfway through, I stepped forward to present our design proposal. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I spoke like someone who owned the room. When the meeting ended, applause filled the air. Mr. Hassan walked up to me, patted my back, and whispered, "Son, I'm proud of you." That word "son" melted something in me. It felt like healing. 2 weeks later, I was inspecting a new project at Acacia when my phone rang. "Sir, a woman is asking for you at the reception." I walked down, adjusting my helmet, and there she was, Clara. For a moment, the air disappeared. She looked at me, eyes wide. "Emmanuel?" I nodded slowly. "Clara." She blinked, trying to process it. "You work here?" I smiled faintly. "I don't just work here. I run it." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her makeup couldn't hide the surprise or regret. The receptionist greeted me. "Good afternoon, sir." Clara's eyes widened. "Sir?" I simply said, "Yes. Excuse me, I have a meeting." And I walked away. My heart was calm, not bitter, just calm, like a storm that finally learned peace. But life wasn't done yet, because what happened next would make the whole village kneel. If anyone had told me 5 years ago that I'd one day return to my village in a black SUV with tinted windows, I would have laughed them straight to heaven. But that morning, as my driver pulled up to the dusty junction that led to Odoake, it hit me. Life really knows how to spin a story. I leaned back in the leather seat, watching the familiar red earth slide past the windows. Small children ran after the car, shouting, "Big man! Big man!" Goats scattered off the road, and palm trees swayed like old friends waving. It had been 7 years since I left. 7 long, wild years. And now, I was coming back not as the poor carpenter's son, but as the man who was about to rebuild the same village that once laughed at him. Mr. Hassan had retired 2 months earlier and handed me full control of Hassan & Co. Construction Limited. He said something that morning that stuck with me. "You don't just build houses, Emmanuel. You build dignity. Go and build where yours was stolen." That's what brought me home. I wasn't returning to boast. I just wanted to give back. But deep down, a small part of me wanted them to see, especially her. The plan was simple. Sponsor the rebuilding of Odoake's market, renovate the school, and donate a new community center. No one would know I was behind it. At least not yet. I'd already sent engineers ahead weeks before. The news spread through the village like wildfire. "An anonymous sponsor from the city is building for us," they said. Who could it be? Some guessed it was a politician. Others thought it was one of those churches trying to win souls. But no one guessed it was me, the same boy they mocked for carving a wooden ring. When we entered the village square, I told my driver to stop. "I'll walk from here," I said. He looked confused. "Sir, the road is still muddy." "I know," I interrupted, smiling. "Let it stain my shoes again. It once stained my dreams." I stepped out, and the smell of earth hit me. Raw, old, familiar. I walked past the same mango tree where Clara had once laughed in my face. It was still there, taller now, its roots twisting through the ground like the veins of the past. Some people were setting up decorations for the big Thanksgiving festival planned for the next day. The new community center, still covered in blue ribbon, stood proudly behind them. The villagers had no idea the mystery man would be there in person. As I stood watching, I heard a voice behind me. "Emmanuel?" I turned. My heart skipped. It was Mama Grace, my childhood neighbor. Her face lit up like morning sun. "Emmanuel, my son? Is it truly you?" She dropped her basket and hugged me tightly. Yes, Mama Grace, it's me. She stepped back, eyes wet. Ah, look at you. Big man now. We heard rumors, but nobody knew for sure. How's your mother? She's fine, Mama. I'm here to surprise her, too. The old woman laughed. Your mama will faint when she sees you. She still prays for you every morning. I smiled. She taught me to pray, too. Then Mama Grace's voice dropped a little. You know Clara is still around, right? My smile faded slightly. Clara? Yes. She lives by the main market now. Things didn't go well for her in the city. She came back with her son. I nodded slowly. I see. Mama Grace looked at me closely. You've forgiven her, eh? I chuckled softly. Let's just say, time built what pride destroyed. Later that evening, I checked into the only lodge in the area, Peace Guest Inn. I didn't want my mother to know I was around yet. I wanted her surprise to happen at the festival. As I sat on the balcony, watching the village lights blink like stars, I thought about everything. The rain, the laughter, the struggle. Funny how pain can become fuel. At midnight, I got a text from my assistant. All materials delivered. The school roofing will finish by morning. Community center ready for unveiling. Everyone excited. I replied, good. Keep the sponsor's name hidden until the ceremony. Then I whispered to myself, tomorrow, they'll know. The next morning, the village woke up to music, dancing, and the smell of roasted corn. Women tied their best wrappers, men wore agbadas that shimmered in the sun. The drummers were already sweating before noon. I wore a simple white kaftan and a black cap. Elegant, but not loud. I didn't want to look like a walking billboard of wealth. When we arrived, the crowd was huge. The new community center stood tall, painted in cream and gold. The signboard was still covered with a red cloth, waiting for the big reveal. At the front row sat the elders, chiefs, and, yes, Clara. She was sitting beside her mother, wearing a blue lace gown. She looked older, not in a bad way, but in that tired way life gives you when you've wrestled too many storms. Her son, maybe 8 years old, sat beside her playing with a balloon. For a second, our eyes met. She froze, her lips parted. Emmanuel, she whispered, though I wasn't close enough to hear, but I saw it in her eyes. Shock, confusion, recognition. The chairman of the event tapped the mic. My people of Odo Ake, today we gather to thank our mystery benefactor who gave us a new school, a clean borehole, and this beautiful community hall. May God bless him wherever he is. The crowd shouted, Amen. He continued, but wait, we have just received word that the sponsor is here with us today. People gasped. Everyone looked around. Please, sir, if you are here, step forward. My heart thudded like drum beats. I stood slowly. All eyes turned to me. Some villagers squinted, trying to remember my face. Others whispered, Who's that? He looks familiar. Wait, oh, is that not? Mama Grace was the first to scream, It's Emmanuel, the carpenter's son. The crowd erupted. Emmanuel? The same Emmanuel? Jesus! He came back! I walked to the front, smiling. I bowed slightly to the elders, then took the microphone. Good afternoon, my people, I began. My voice echoed through the speakers. My name is Emmanuel Adewale. I was born in this village. I left years ago with nothing but a bag and a dream. Murmurs filled the crowd. Many of you remember me, I continued. Some of you laughed at me. Some pitied me. Some prayed for me. But I came back, not to boast, but to build what laughter once destroyed. The crowd went silent. My mother taught me that when you fall, don't curse the ground. Learn how to walk better. At that moment, I spotted Mama in the crowd, eyes wide, tears rolling. I smiled and motioned to her. The crowd parted as she walked forward, trembling. Mama, I said softly into the mic, you told me to never forget where I started. Today I return home to say thank you. Then I did something no one expected. I knelt down before her. The entire square gasped. Cameras clicked. The drummers stopped. Mama, I said, holding her hand, you believed in me when no one did. This community center is in your honor. It will be called Grace Hall. Tears rolled down her face. My son, stand up before I faint. But I didn't stand. Not yet, because something powerful was happening. One by one, people in the crowd began to kneel. The elders, the market women, the drummers, even the chief slowly went down on one knee. It wasn't worship. It was respect. They had once mocked a boy who had nothing. Now they knelt for the man who gave them everything. I finally stood and uncovered the red cloth on the signboard. It read, Grace Hall, built by Emmanuel Adewale, son of Odo Ake. The crowd roared. The drums started again, louder this time. People danced, ululated, cried. Mama clung to me, laughing through her tears. My son, you did not shame me. I hugged her tight. How could I? You're the root that kept me grounded. Then came the voice I wasn't ready for. Emmanuel. I turned. Clara stood a few feet away, her hands trembling, eyes wet. For a second, the whole world faded. Just her and me. Again, under the same sun, in the same village, by the same tree of memories. But this time the power had shifted. She walked closer, her voice breaking. So it's true? You built all this? I nodded. Yes? She swallowed hard. I don't even know what to say. Then don't, I said quietly. She bit her lip, then whispered, You must hate me. I shook my head. No. I stopped carrying that kind of weight long ago. She blinked fast, fighting tears. I was young, foolish. I thought money made love stronger. And what do you think now? I asked. Her voice cracked. That love doesn't live in pockets. The crowd was still cheering in the background, but her words cut through the noise. Emmanuel, she said, almost in a whisper. Can we talk later? I nodded once. Maybe, but not today. She lowered her gaze, embarrassed, and walked back to her seat. Her son looked at me and smiled shyly, not knowing the history behind our eyes. I smiled back. The festival continued into the evening. The drummers played, the women danced, and speeches followed one another. But I barely heard them, because as I stood there watching my people celebrate, something inside me shifted again. I had come to prove a point. But what I found was peace. And though I didn't know it yet, that peace was about to be tested, because fate wasn't done playing with me. Hi, story lovers. Before we dive into today's episode, please click the red subscribe button and join our Story and Soul family, where African stories come alive with emotion, lessons, and a little bit of madness that only life can write. All right, sit tight, because what happens next in Emmanuel's story will make your heart beat fast. They say power changes people, but I think true power doesn't change you. It only exposes who you really are. After the festival ended that day, I sat alone inside Grace Hall while everyone else celebrated outside. The smell of jollof rice and suya filled the air. Children were dancing, men were drinking, and praise songs echoed through the speakers. But me? I was sitting there staring at the same walls I built, walls that were once dreams carved from pain. Then I heard footsteps, soft, careful, almost nervous. Emmanuel? I didn't turn immediately. I knew the voice. Clara. She stood at the doorway, wearing that same blue lace gown. Her makeup had faded, her hair slightly messy from the heat. For the first time in years, she looked human. Not proud, not perfect, just real. Can we talk? She asked quietly. I nodded and gestured to the empty chair opposite me. For a moment, the silence between us was heavy. You could almost hear the ghosts of our past sitting with us. She cleared her throat. I don't even know how to start. Then start with the truth, I said, folding my arms. Her eyes glistened. You were right that day. About everything. I thought you were joking when you proposed. I didn't see what you carried inside. I smirked. It's funny how people only start seeing clearly after life removes their tinted glasses. She winced. I deserved that. You did, I said flatly. She looked down at her hands. When I left for the city with Daniel, the man you saw in that car, I thought I had won. He promised me the world, cars, clothes, everything. But what I didn't know was that he was already married, and I was the side story in his life. I looked at her, expressionless. So when you found out, he left me, with a baby. Her voice cracked. I came back here with nothing, no job, no pride. I started selling tomatoes in the market. For the first time, I saw pain in her eyes that words couldn't hide. I leaned forward slightly. Clara, I'm not God. I can't judge you. But I won't pretend it didn't hurt. That day, when you threw my ring away in front of everyone, something inside me died. She wiped her eyes. I know, and I've carried that guilt every day since. I came to tell you I'm sorry. Her voice trembled when she said it, and for the first time, I believed her. I don't need your apology, I said quietly, not because I'm angry, but because I already healed. She stared at me, confused. Then why does it feel like you're still angry? I chuckled softly. Maybe because forgiveness doesn't erase memory. We sat there, the air thick between us. Then I said something that surprised even me. Clara, I didn't come back for revenge. I came back to build what laughter once destroyed. This village needed change, and so did I. She swallowed hard. You've really changed, Emmanuel. No, I replied, standing up. I just grew into the man your laughter tried to bury. She exhaled shakily. I guess I'm the one left behind. I looked at her son playing with balloons outside through the window. No one is left behind. Some journeys just take longer. Her voice softened. Would you ever forgive me enough to be my friend? I paused, then smiled faintly. Maybe, but only if you promise not to laugh at poor men again. She laughed weakly, tears running down her cheeks. Deal. We both smiled, not out of romance, but relief. The kind that comes when two people finally drop the stones they've carried too long. That night, I went home with Mama. She cooked my favorite meal, yam porridge with dried fish. As we ate, she said, "That girl came to beg, didn't she?" I raised an eyebrow. "How did you know?" She laughed. "I saw her crying behind the hall when you were greeting the chief. I'm old, but I still see things." I smiled. "You were right, Mama. Time fixed what anger couldn't." She patted my hand. "My son, the best revenge is peace, and you found it." I nodded slowly. "Maybe. But tomorrow will be harder." She frowned. "Why?" "Because tomorrow I'll see who truly kneels." The next day, the festival continued, day 2. The chief had invited pastors, musicians, even local journalists. It was the biggest event the village had seen in years. I arrived late, wearing a cream agbada and brown cap. The whole crowd turned when I walked in. Phones came out, whispers filled the air. That's him! The builder, the sponsor. I smiled politely and took my seat beside the elders. The announcer shouted into the mic, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the pride of Odo Ake, our son, our hero, engineer Emmanuel Adewale." The crowd cheered. Drums rolled. Someone threw confetti made of palm leaves. It was beautiful chaos. When the noise died down, I took the microphone again. "My people," I began, "I didn't come back just to give you buildings. I came back to remind us all that dignity doesn't live in money. It lives in how we treat one another." People nodded. The women murmured amen. I turned toward the section where Clara sat. She froze as our eyes met again. "Years ago," I continued, "I was laughed at for being poor. But that laughter built me. It pushed me to dream bigger. It taught me that sometimes rejection is just redirection." The crowd clapped. Then I added, "So today, I kneel again. Not for love, not for pity, but for gratitude." I slowly went down on one knee, facing the villagers. Gasps filled the air. I said, "To every person who mocked me, thank you. You showed me who I never want to become. To everyone who believed in me, especially my mother, thank you. You showed me what I could be." Silence. Then suddenly, one of the elders, Chief Olamide, stood up and said loudly, "No, my son. Today, we are the ones who kneel." And right there, one by one, the entire square began to kneel again. Old men with walking sticks, women with wrappers tied around their waists. Even children followed, copying their parents. It was like the ground itself bowed to grace. Clara hesitated at first, her eyes shining with tears. Then she slowly bent her knees too, clutching her son's hand. He looked up at her, confused. "Mama, why are we kneeling?" she whispered. "Because we once stood too high." I felt a lump rise in my throat. My eyes burned. I raised my hand and said, "Please stand. I didn't build this place so anyone would kneel before me. I built it so we'd rise together." The crowd erupted again. This time, the cheers were louder, purer, not for money, but for meaning. Mama came to stand beside me. She whispered, "You've done enough, my son." I smiled faintly. Almost enough. Because deep inside, I knew there was still one thing left, one last promise I had to keep before peace could truly settle in my bones, and that promise would shake everything again. Hi, story lovers. Before we begin the final part of this emotional ride, please take 1 second to click the red subscribe button below this video. Join the Story and Soul family, where we tell African stories that remind you that pain can build purpose and laughter can sometimes lead to redemption. Now, sit back, because this final chapter will melt your heart. The crowd slowly rose from the ground, still clapping, still cheering. The sun had started to set, painting the sky orange and gold, like even heaven was celebrating. But while everyone's faces glowed with joy, mine was heavy with thought. Because deep inside, I knew this moment, this kneeling, this victory, wasn't the end. It was a beginning. Mama stood beside me, proud and glowing, while villagers danced and praised. But when I looked at Clara kneeling with her son, something stirred quietly in me. Not love, not anger, just a strange, quiet peace that whispered, "You're free now." Later that evening, I took the microphone again. The noise died down slowly until even the drummers froze mid-beat. "My people," I said, "thank you for today. But before I leave, there's one more thing I must do." They murmured, curious. I didn't come back to build halls and schools only. I came to build hope, because I was once hopeless. I want every child in this village to have a chance to become more than their pain. Gasps of surprise moved through the crowd. "So," I continued, "starting today, I am launching the Adewale Scholarship Fund. Every year, 10 children from this village, no matter how poor, will go to school on my sponsorship. Their books, fees, uniforms, everything, paid in full." The crowd screamed in joy. Some started crying. Mama pressed her hand to her chest and whispered, "Oh Lord, thank you." But I wasn't done yet. "There's more," I said, raising a hand. "This new hall will not just host meetings or parties. It will also serve as a free training center for artisans, carpenters, tailors, hairdressers, mechanics. Because dignity doesn't only come from certificates, it also comes from skill." That last line made the crowd explode again. People rushed forward, touching my arm, blessing me, thanking me. I looked at Clara, and our eyes met once more. She was standing now, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. When the crowd quieted, she stepped forward slowly, holding her son's hand. "Emmanuel," she said, her voice trembling through the mic, "on behalf of everyone here and on behalf of myself, I want to say thank you." She paused, took a shaky breath. "Years ago, I laughed when I should have believed. I mocked when I should have prayed. But today I've seen that God can lift dust into diamonds." The crowd murmured in agreement. Some nodded, others clapped softly. Then she did something I never expected. She dropped the microphone, knelt down again. This time, not out of shock or guilt, but out of deep respect. Her son followed her, small knees touching the ground. "Thank you for showing me what true wealth looks like," she said quietly. My throat tightened. I walked to her, lifted her up gently, and whispered, "You don't owe me kneeling, Clara. You owe it to yourself to stand tall again." She smiled faintly. "Then stand with me." And we stood, two broken people who had finally forgiven the past. The drums started again. The sun began to dip behind the trees. Children were running, people were dancing, and laughter, genuine laughter this time, filled the air. Mama leaned toward me and whispered, "You did well, my son. You made peace with your pain." I smiled. "No, Mama. We did." By the next morning, the festival had ended, but the feeling of it still lingered in the air. Villagers went about talking about the event like it was a legend. Some said, "That boy turned our shame into blessing." Others said, "God sent him back to heal us." I just smiled each time I overheard them. They didn't know that the boy who once slept under bridges still carried the same heart. That evening, I walked alone through the village paths, the same dusty road I had taken the night I left. This time, I wasn't running away. I was walking through it, healed. I stopped at the old mango tree, the same one where I had knelt years ago with my wooden ring. The wind was soft, the air smelled of wet sand and new beginnings. I sat under the tree, watching children play nearby. One of them ran up to me, a little girl with pigtails and bright eyes. "Uncle, my teacher said you are the man who built the big hall." I laughed. "Did she say that?" "Yes, she said you used to be poor, but now you are rich." "Is it true?" I smiled gently. "I was never poor, my dear. I just didn't have money yet." She giggled and ran off. As I watched her go, a strange peace settled in my heart. Maybe this was what wealth truly felt like. Not cars, not mansions, but moments where your story becomes someone's hope. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Clara again. She stood a few feet away, dressed simply in a wrapper and t-shirt. No makeup this time. Just her. "I didn't know you'd still be here," she said softly. "I was saying goodbye to the tree," I replied, smiling. "It's seen more drama than most churches." She laughed quietly, then grew serious. "Emmanuel, I don't want anything from you. I just want to say I'm proud of who you became." "Thank you," I said. She looked at the sunset. "Your story gives people like me hope. Maybe one day I'll start again too." "You will," I said. "You already have." We stood in silence for a while, watching the orange sky fade into purple. Then she said, "Will you ever marry?" I smiled. "Maybe. When I find someone who sees the man, not the money." She nodded slowly. "Then she'll be lucky." "Or maybe I'll be the lucky one," I said. She smiled once more, then turned to leave. I watched her walk away, calm, graceful, lighter than before. Maybe forgiveness had set us both free. As darkness fell, I whispered into the wind, to every man who's ever been mocked for being small, keep going. The same people who laugh today will one day tell your story with pride. I got into my car, rolled down the window, and looked at the village one last time. Children were still playing around Grace Hall. The sound of their laughter echoed into the evening, the kind of laughter that didn't wound but healed. I started the engine, and as the car moved slowly past the mango tree, I whispered, "You can rest now, Emmanuel. You kept your promise." And with that, I drove off. Not as the boy who was laughed at, but as the man who turned that laughter into legacy. Story lovers, what do you think about this story? Do you agree with Emmanuel's decision to forgive Clara, or do you think he should have walked away without ever speaking to her again? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to click the red subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss more emotional African stories that will touch your soul. Check your right corner of the screen right now. I've left another story there that'll leave you thinking long after it ends. This is Story and Soul, where every story reminds you, it's not where you start, it's how you rise.